Hey, Truth Seekers. So there were a few big stories in Tuesday's mainstream media. There was the Chris Kyle hoax case. If you haven't seen my video on Chris Kyle, please do that. I also have a written post on Eddie Ray Ruth, who was sentenced to life in prison. I have a written post on my blog right now. All this stuff is a hoax. What I want to talk about, though, is this kidnapped Methodist missionary in Nigeria who's from the Seattle area here. As it turns out, my friend actually knows this woman. So I have a friend who I have every reason to trust. And beyond that, her father was even on Cairo 7, the local news here in Seattle, this evening, talking about it because he's a higher up in the Methodist Church and she's part of the Methodist Church community of Seattle. So, we're going to look at the gematria, the numerology, as we always do, and then we'll talk a little bit more about that. Let's start, though, by watching the CNN coverage of this story.
Phyllis Sortor was running an NGO that educates nomadic Fulani children. Where the kidnapping took place was the school where her office is located. Two of those five men who scaled the wall were masked. They whisked her away to the nearby mountains, firing into the air. At this stage, the police commissioner of Kogi State is saying that they do believe this is a criminal act. However, Wolf, the concern is that because this group has demanded 300,000 or thereabouts in ransom, they could end up selling her on to the highest bidder.
Do they suspect Boko Haram, even though this is an area that is not necessarily in Boko Haram's reach?
It's not in Boko Haram's reach, Wolf, at least not at this junction in time. This area is south of Abuja, around 200 kilometers to the south, say over 100 miles. But it is an area where a few years ago, Boko Haram did manage to stage a massive prison breakout of their own fighters. Since then, the Nigerian authorities have put checkpoints into place, making it quite difficult for Boko Haram fighters to access it. However, we did speak to a Nigerian intelligence source who said that another terrorist organization, Ansari, that is something of a spin-off from Boko Haram, they do maintain loose ties, does have cells in this particular state. Now, its ties to Boko Haram have been significantly diminished, but again, the concern is that since this does seem to be a highly sophisticated criminal act, it could be that this gang does have the intent, if this ransom is not paid, to then capitalize on the fact that they do have a Western hostage and potentially pass her on to an organization, sell her on to an organization like Boko Haram will.
Alright, so that's the mainstream coverage on it. From the story, we're told that she's a Methodist missionary who has a school in Nigeria educating children. And supposedly, in the area, a lot of the locals do not approve of her school. So that's the story they're putting out. What I want to look at, though, is the gematria of this woman that my friend vouches for and says that she has known for more than 20 years. My friend is my age. I'm 31. And they say they have known this Phyllis Sortor through their church for more than 20 years. So this name Phyllis Sortor is very interesting. Phyllis is 38 with Pythagorean, 47 with the S exception. The word Christian is 47. With the S exception, Christian's 56. Sortor is 33 Pythagorean gematria, a number we find coded very often, and 42 with the S exception, like the 42-line Bible. First printed Bible, March 22nd, 1455. 322. Anyway, Phyllis Sortor with S exception sums to 89, just like the word religion, just like the name fallen angel. Phyllis is also just like Christian with simple English gematria. It sums to 101, so the name Phyllis has this double Christian connection. Methodist is also interesting because it has the 113 gematria. Many of the different sects of Christianity have very interesting gematria. Adventist, 33. A lot of them are. The word missionary, if you write out the word 42, if you spell it out and then sum it with simple English gematria, it sums to 142. The word missionary also sums to 142. The number 39 written out also sums to 142. 39 books in the Old Testament. So she was kidnapped in Koji State, and if you read the story read like something out of a Hollywood script. 5 masked men scaled a wall and then grabbed her from the compound. You know, it's like, wow, who is running those type of maneuvers, you know? Just some village locals? That sounds like some pretty skilled stuff. So anyway, Koji sums to 33 with the K exception. Koji State with the different forms of Pythagorean gematria yields very interesting values. And she's said to be with the Hope Academy, or that's the name of her school. Emphasis on the word hope, which has a gematria of 44, like the word kill. Just did that post on Dale Earnhardt. 44 was a big part of that. So earlier in the day, they were saying it was Boko Haram. Now they're saying it's not. It was out of their territory. So this detail has switched since this morning's reporting. I read this story earlier today, and then they were accusing it of Boko Haram. But anyway, they've used this group a lot this year. They have the gematria of 39, like the number of books in the Old Testament. My friend's father, who went on the television, has the last name of Whitehead. He's a higher up in the Methodist Church. His name happens to have the right gematria, especially for television in this story. And what's interesting is from talking to his daughter, it seemed like even he was a bit surprised to be called in and briefed and to go on the media. So it almost makes me wonder if they really do, when they need these stories, if they look for groups of people who meet the criteria and pull them by their name. You know, maybe he's in the right place at the right time and gets sucked into all this. You know, it's what they say about lies, how they can spiral out of control, suck all sorts of innocent people in. And perhaps that's what I'm witnessing here on a local level. It's very interesting, Truth Seeker. But what I think happened here is I think if she might very well have been kidnapped from her compound, but likely by American forces or NATO forces for this propagandist hoax, you know? Part of this ongoing conspiracy of propaganda to make us mad at parts of the world we don't need to be mad at. For those of you who don't know anyone who's Muslim, I encourage you to meet some Muslim people. When I taught in South Seattle, I'm from the Seattle area where this woman's from. If you've never been to Seattle, it's an almost segregated city. The south side of Seattle's mostly minorities, and it's very diverse. About 4 years ago, a neighborhood in Seattle was considered the most diverse community in all of America, and I taught in a school in that neighborhood, and a large part of that community is Muslim. And I'll tell you what, those Muslim parents, they really care about their kids, and they work hard for their kids, you know? Honestly, it's hard for me to see them all covered up. In my personal belief, it doesn't seem like that's the way it's supposed to be, but that's what they do. It doesn't make them bad people. I mean, they're really nice people. They care about their kids. They got good values. They're polite. They're friendly. So, anyway, all these mainstream medias are about divide and conquer. My message is about let's wake up and unite and expose the madness. And people don't need to be mad at Muslims. So, until next time, Truth Seeker.